New technology dates quickly these days. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Keeper of Traken, written by Johnny Burns and directed by John Black. This is a 4-part adventure, and it's the penultimate adventure of the 4th Doctor era. And it's a very strange story. It has a much more lighter tone compared to previous stories. For example, the Doctor and Adric just come back from East Space, head into Gallifrey. They find the planet of Traken, to which the Doctor explains that it's just a planet of pure good, and rumour has it that when evil lands on it, it just shrivels up and dies. And some reason the TARDIS gets programmed to go on the planet, and they get a message from a celestial being known as the Keeper of Traken, which is basically just an old guy on a very powerful chair, if you say it like that. And he sends them on a little mission onto Traken as he fears that there is a great evil that is about to overthrow the planet of Traken. And that's really basically our setup, with the Doctor and Adric going onto this small little planet of peace and prosperity. And because of it, it has a much more gentler tone compared to previous stories. This story introduces the character of Nessa, although in this story I wouldn't really consider her a companion yet. Although in the last, even with the fact in the last scene, she actually the Doctor and Adric leave without her. She doesn't become a companion until the next story, Logopolis. So I don't really think this story counts as her companion introduction. I just believe this is her introduction in terms of just a general character. Now, Nessa is played by Sarah Sutton, and she is a fantastic actress. But here, she doesn't get a lot to do. She just kind of blends into the background. She's not a bad actress by any stretch of the words, and she actually is given a great character, one who is sweet and innocent and is folly to her parents, but she takes a lot of action in this story. But in terms of her as a character, of a personality trait, she just blends into the background, and there's nothing really that shines out yet. She would get a lot to do in the 5th Doctor era. And so the Doctors come down on this planet to solve this conspiracy, and they learn about the statue of Melka. Melkas are a race of beings that are just pure evil, and one of them landed on the planet of Traken, and Nessa's mother and Tamnis's wife, she basically goes to treat the Melka. Because the Melka is apparently so pure evil, it stays as a statue there for millions of years, until Nessa's mother grows older. And this is a very interesting point in classic Doctor Who. This is probably the first story with a flashback before the Doctor and Adric arrive on the planet. The Keeper of Traken takes the Doctor's computer screen and shows him an image of the past and how the Melka came to the planet. So yeah, it's very strange, and it gives this story a much more fairy tale-y kind of feeling. The story feels like a fairy tale. Nessa even feels like a sort of badass princess, with her parents being the king and the queen of the state, because they basically are the rulers at the moment of the planet, and they have a small council, and they agree on everything, and they have plans, and they can summon the Keeper whenever they need to. But before the Doctor arrives, there has been a murder which they examine and they realise there's some sort of energy beam that has done this. And when the Doctor and Adric arrive, Ness's mother tries desperately to try and get them to take the blame, but the other characters aren't too sure. So they summon the Keeper, and before the Keeper could even say anything, he notices that the Melker has actually moved and came out of the from behind the corner, and before it can actually reply to whether the strangers, the Doctor and Adric, are evil or good, he actually just screams evil. There's evil on Traken, which he's trying to explain as the Melker, but everybody else thinks it's the Doctor and Adric. So we have a bit of conflict there, which keeps the story nice and nice pasted story. Let's talk about the Melker. The Melker is just a thing of beauty. I really love this design. It's basically like a distorted humanoid statue with a face that goes like that. Later on we learn that it's some sort of a robot or a ship. But a fun fact, the actual Melker creatures were supposed to appear in a sixth Doctor adventure, which was never produced for television, but actually Big Finish released it as an audio drama, so that's really cool. So the story is basically the rest of the Traken Empire believing that the Doctor and Adric are the baddies, and the Doctor befriends Nessa's father, Tasmas, I believe his name is Tasmas, played by Anthony Ainley. The reason why Anthony Ainley was cast is because he was a huge friend of Tom Baker, and because this story was basically supposed to be the start of his swan song, because this will be start of a trilogy which we'll get onto later. They wanted basically Tom Baker to feel at home before he leaves. So Anthony Ainley was cast, and he does a fantastically cheesy performance. And he will only get bigger in the Doctor Who franchise from here. We'll talk about that when we talk about the end of the story. And so, the Doctor, Adric and Tasmas basically tried to find out what's actually happening, whilst everybody else believes that the Doctor is a villain. However, as Tasmas points out, they're not actually charged yet. There's no proof yet. So, in a court of justice, let them prevail, trying to save themselves. Let them try and get evidence for them not being the villains, to try and find out the real villains. So we learn that basically Traken is a very peaceful planet, a very almost spiritual in a way. I'm trying to think of another planet I can inspire it by. No, I can't. Anyway, so let's talk about Johnny Byrne's directing. This story looks great. It just looks great. It's probably the weakest looking story of this season, but it still does a very good job. It does still have some great ambitious camera angles. One of my favourites, in fact, is the flashback scene where it's looking at the TARDIS screen, and the camera actually pans into the screen, and it still pans whilst it's in the setting of the flashback. And small little details like that really push stories in the season 18 much further than they probably deserve. And yeah, Johnny Burns just does a great job. Most of it is pretty generic, but there are some great shots, there are some great stunning visuals, and it's just a great looking story. Some of the sets are just absolutely stunning. I really like Tasmas's house, and how he's got like a hidden details of the plan of the source, the power source of the Keeper of Traken, and he keeps it by like in a wall, and he puts his hand there, and it, like a block appears on the wall, and he can duck his hand in there and stuff. And when his hand's gone, the wall solids up. I really like stuff like that. And the courtroom with the Keeper's cabinet in the background, I really just like the look of that. And the forestry, the garden where the Malka and the TARDIS are, that also looks really good. It reminds me a lot of the little garden in the Aztecs, which is a great compliment because I love the Aztecs. So yeah, the Doctor and Adric trying to find this conspiracy. Now, Tom Baker does a decent job. This is probably Tom Baker at his weakest. You can kind of see that he's not really into this plot. He's kind of maybe it's because there's no Romana or no. Was just working with Adric really as a companion, but you could see that Tom Baker isn't probably giving it his all. Or if he is, he's not. It's not coming off on screen that very well. We do get some really sweet moments with him and Adric. The Doctor and Adric, the Fourth Doctor and Adric, always remind me of Batman and Robin. Adric is basically the Doctor's ward, helping him out on his little schemes and plans as Adric learns to. Adric learns to fly the TARDIS, which a lot of people don't really talk about. This will start a trend in which the Doctor's companions will also learn to fly the TARDIS, whether they're Time Lord or not. Yeah, that's really cool. So the Doctor and Adric try to find a way to block the Melka's power over people, because he seems to have a mind control over Nessa's mother. And she basically is like the secondary villain, and she can talk to the Melka, and he talks when talks to him when no one else is around, and she gets influenced to do evil things, like believe that the Doctor's a traitor and stuff, and Nessa and all that. There's a great scene in which the Melka stops talking, and the mother walks off, and then she quickly grabs Nessa, who is hiding, and it's like, "You better run, girl, you better run," and throws her off. And I think it's here as well that we learn that the Melka's not always as it seems, as we get a shot of like an inside of a spaceship, and it's got two screens that look like the Melka's eyes looking at Nessa's mother, and you see a crippled man's hand, almost like a burnt hand. And he also states that he knows the Doctor and is puzzled by how the Doctor still doesn't know him yet. And this bit always makes me feel like this story would have fitted very well in New Who. New Who has a lot of, well, you don't know who you don't know who I am? Well, I'll tell you, Doctor. But makes the reveal such a dramatic thing. That might not work here, because when you tag it down to a individual in Doctor Who, it can only really be two characters, Davros or the Master. It's later revealed, spoiler warning, that it is the Master who had survived after his encounter with the Doctor in The Deadly Assassins. Although it is important to note that the Master actually returns between these two stories in the Big Finish audio dramas. Here he's played by Geoffrey Beavers, I believe his name is. And this would be his only claim to the Master role in television. And it's a shame, because he doesn't get a lot to do. Most of the story he just is the voice for the Melka, influencing Nessa's mother. And it's only really until like the second half of part 4, the finale, to which it's not only revealed he's the Master, but where he also gets his performance out. And despite how good an actor you are, you're not going to make a great impression in that short amount of time. I mean, you might do it, but only a handful of actors on the world could do that. But luckily, Joffrey Beavers, if you like this incarnation and think that he deserves more, you'd be glad to know that he is actually the master in the Big Finish audio dramas, as he appears as a younger master from this story point of view in stories set with the Fourth Doctor, and he also, according to the larger canon of Big Finish, goes back into this body after his next body decays, and he basically reverts back into Joffrey Breves, and he fights the 6th and the 7th, and I believe the 8th Doctor as well, but I could be wrong. According to Big Finish, he is the master that gets turned into the Death Worm incarnation. So that's really interesting. And the master basically plan is that he's going to, when the Keeper dies, this planet, they get somebody else to sit on the chair, where for thousands of years they basically keep the peace of the planet, with it they get immense powers. For example, they get teleportation, immortality, and just a lot of general powers. And the Master uses the Melker's suit, which I believe he says is his TARDIS. It makes a TARDIS noise when it dematerializes, although the inside doesn't actually look like a TARDIS, unless it's just one room. It could be. And so the Master puts the Melker onto the chair, which grants the Melker's power. Because the Master's controlling the Melker, he can not only have the power of the Melker, but he can also go off the chair if he needs be, and which basically allows him full mobility. He can go anywhere in space and time, anywhere in space, regardless of any form of lock or key. So that's a really cool plot to the story. But then the Doctor quickly finds a way to stop the source, and with the Master using the Malka's chair, the Master using the Keeper's chair basically creates havoc in everywhere, and the Doctor has to go near the panel and to put in a code. I believe he said 337, but the Master doesn't know this, and he mind controls the Doctor to go into the Melker, and this is where it's revealed that he's the Master, and Joffrey Beeves gets to show off his Master, and he reminds me of a leech. He's constantly doing this, and when he gets up to other characters, he's basically not feeling their arm, but hovering over them, as you can see it in his eyes that he's looking for prey. He is a Master that is on the desperate side of life, and basically sees the world as predator and prey, and he is the predator. He is the shriveled creature that is hungry and just wants to rejuvenate. And he's about to do something to the Doctor, as he proclaims that the Doctor's body is strong and powerful and stuff. But something happens as Adric puts in the codes, weakening the source of the Melker, basically setting it ablaze. And the Doctor quickly escapes, whilst the Master seemingly burns in the Melker costume. And whilst this is at their weak point, the Melker disappears, and one of the Traken characters runs to the chair and becomes the new Keeper. And that's really it of the main plot of the story. However, when the Doctor and Adric leave and say goodbye and stuff, and Ness is talking to her father, saying, we can go back to peace and stuff, and he's like, I'll be with you in a moment. I just want to check something. And then Tesmas walks around and he notices a clock, and he puts his hand on the clock and he freezes up and he calls out for help, and the clock opens to reveal the Master, to which he proclaims, "A new body, at last." And then he climbs up like behind him and the faces kind of merge, and then Temnas basically gains a new appearance where he has black hair and a goatee, and then you hear him going, "A new body, at last." And the way he just skips into the Master's TARDIS, stunning, absolutely stunning. And this would start Anthony Ainley's portrayal as the Master, who has taken the body of Tesmas. And that's how the story ends. That's the Keeper of Traken. Overall, it's a great story. It might feel like a bit of setup for Logopolis, as the Master doesn't get a lot to do in this plot. And Nessa gets introduced, but she's not really a companion yet. But the story has a nice, gentle quality to it. I just remembered, I said Johnny Blaze is director. John Black is the director, sorry. Johnny Burns is the writer. Sorry about that. That's my mistake. But anyway, the story is pretty good. It might not be as memorable as other stories in season 18, but I still think it's a really good plot, and there you go. So join me next time where the Doctor gets introduced to a mysterious vigil ghost spirit thing as he encounters the Watcher, and the Master tries to create entropy throughout the universe. So join me next time in Logopolis, and we say goodbye to the 4th Doctor. See you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.